The women who fought in the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783. When you think about the American Revolution, names like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Paul Revere probably come to mind. But what if I told you that some of the most crucial battles weren't fought by men at all? What if the real heroes of independence were wearing dresses instead of uniforms? Welcome to Military Hmmm, where we dive deep into the untold stories that shaped our world. I'm your host, and today we're uncovering the remarkable tales of women who didn't just support the revolution from the sidelines. They grabbed muskets, donned disguises, and changed the course of American history forever. For too long, these incredible women have been footnotes in our history books. But their stories deserve to be told in full, because without them, we might still be singing God Save the Queen every morning. From teenage spies who outsmarted British officers to wives who transformed army camps into lifelines, these women proved that courage has no gender. The year is 1775, and tensions between the American colonies and British rule have reached a breaking point. The Boston Tea Party is still fresh in everyone's memory, and whispers of revolution fill the air from Massachusetts to Georgia. But while men debate politics in taverns and meeting halls, women across the colonies are facing their own impossible choices. Most women during this era were expected to stay home, tend to their families, and leave the fighting to their husbands and sons. Society demanded they remain silent observers while their world burned around them. But some women refused to accept this passive role. They understood that freedom wasn't just a man's cause, it was everyone's fight. Picture this scene. Your husband has marched off to war, leaving you alone with children to feed and crops to harvest. British soldiers are ransacking your neighborhood, taking whatever they please. Do you hide and hope for the best, or do you take matters into your own hands? For countless women across the colonies, the choice was clear. These weren't just desperate times calling for desperate measures. This was the birth of a new kind of American woman, one who would rather die fighting than live on her knees. And their stories will absolutely blow your mind. Let's start with the camp followers. Now, before you get the wrong idea, these weren't groupies following rock stars. These were the backbone of the Continental Army. When soldiers marched off to fight the British, they left behind a massive logistical nightmare. Who would cook their meals? Who would mend their uniforms? Who would care for the wounded and dying? Enter the camp followers, thousands of women who packed up their lives and followed the army from battle to battle. They weren't officially enlisted, but they were absolutely essential. These women turned military camps into functioning communities where soldiers could rest, recover, and prepare for the next fight. The conditions were brutal. Imagine trudging through mud for miles, sleeping in makeshift tents, and constantly dodging enemy fire, all while trying to keep an army fed and healthy with almost no resources. These women didn't sign up for glory or recognition. They did it because they knew that without them, the Continental Army would collapse within weeks. Among these remarkable women was someone you've definitely heard of, though probably not in this context. Martha Washington didn't just sit in Mount Vernon sipping tea while her husband played general. Every winter, when the Continental Army settled into their quarters, Martha packed her bags and joined them. But this wasn't some comfortable retreat. Martha arrived at Valley Forge during one of the harshest winters in American history. Soldiers were literally leaving bloody footprints in the snow because they didn't have shoes. Men were dying from cold and starvation faster than they were dying from British bullets. And Martha rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She organized the other officers' wives to create a massive relief effort. They darned socks, distributed blankets, and sat with dying soldiers who were thousands of miles from home. Martha understood that sometimes the difference between victory and defeat isn't won on the battlefield. It's won in the quiet moments when someone shows you that you matter. One Continental Army officer wrote about Martha's tireless efforts, describing how she worked from dawn until late into the night, ensuring that soldiers had whatever comfort she could provide. She didn't see herself as above the common soldier. She saw herself as their mother, their protector, their hope for tomorrow. but camp followers were just one piece of this incredible puzzle. While some women supported the war effort openly, others had to get creative, much more creative. The British controlled most major cities and transportation routes. Getting messages between American forces meant navigating through enemy territory where capture meant certain death. Military leaders desperately needed couriers who could blend in, avoid suspicion, and complete missions that seasoned soldiers couldn't pull off. This is where teenage girls became some of America's most effective spies. Picture being 16 years old and having a British officer hand you a letter that could change the outcome of the entire war. That's exactly what happened to Emily Geiger in South Carolina. General Nathaniel Greene needed to coordinate an attack with General Thomas Sumter, but every mail courier they sent was either captured or killed by British patrols. Someone suggested sending Emily, a local girl who knew the back roads and could ride as well as any man. It seemed impossible. A teenage girl traveling alone through occupied territory would raise immediate suspicion. But Emily had something that male spies didn't have. She could hide in plain sight. When British soldiers stopped her, they saw exactly what they expected to see. A young woman out for a ride, probably visiting relatives or running errands for her family. They couldn't imagine that this innocent-looking girl was carrying military secrets that could cost them the war. But Emily was smarter than they gave her credit for. When the British decided to search her more thoroughly, she made a split-second decision that saved the entire mission. She ate the letter, every single piece of it. When the British found nothing, they had no choice but to let her go. Emily continued to Sumter's camp and delivered the message from memory, word for word. Her incredible act of quick thinking and courage kept crucial military intelligence out of British hands and allowed American forces to coordinate their next move. Stories like Emily's were happening across all 13 colonies. Women were using their supposed invisibility to move freely through enemy lines, gathering intelligence and carrying messages that male spies simply couldn't deliver. But some women weren't content to work behind the scenes. They wanted to fight. Before we dive into those incredible stories, I want you to hit that like button if you're enjoying these untold tales of American courage. And make sure to subscribe to Military Hmmm, because we're just getting started with stories that will completely change how you think about the founding of our nation. Drop a comment below and let me know which woman's story has surprised you the most so far. The challenge for women who wanted to fight was obvious. The Continental Army didn't accept female soldiers. Period. Military service was considered a man's duty and a man's privilege. Women who wanted to serve their country in combat had to find another way. Some chose the most dangerous path imaginable. They disguised themselves as men. This wasn't just about cutting their hair and putting on a uniform. These women had to completely transform themselves. They had to learn to walk differently, talk differently, and think like men in an era when gender roles were absolutely rigid. One mistake, one slip of the tongue, one moment of weakness could expose them and end their military careers instantly. Meet Deborah Sampson, a young woman from Massachusetts who decided she'd rather die fighting for freedom than live safely at home. In 1782, she bound her chest, cut her hair, and enlisted in the Continental Army under the name Robert Shirtliff. For over a year, she served alongside men who had no idea they were fighting next to a woman. Deborah wasn't playing soldier. She was a real combat veteran who saw actual battle. During one engagement, she took a musket ball to the thigh and shrapnel to her forehead. Here's where her story gets absolutely incredible. When Army doctors tried to treat her wounds, Deborah was terrified they'd discover her secret. So she snuck out of the medical tent and performed surgery on herself with a penknife and sewing needle. Think about that level of determination. She was willing to endure unimaginable pain rather than risk exposure. For months, she continued fighting with an infected wound that should have killed her. It wasn't until she collapsed from fever during a different illness that a doctor finally discovered the truth. But instead of turning her in, that doctor protected her secret until she was ready to reveal it herself. When Deborah was honorably discharged in 1783, she had served longer and fought harder than many of her male counterparts. Years later, she became the first woman in American history to receive a military pension for her service. Deborah's story proves something remarkable about this generation of American women. They weren't just supporting the cause from a distance. They were willing to risk everything, including their lives and their identities, to fight for the principles they believed in. But the revolution wasn't just an American affair. European powers had their own stakes in this conflict, and their women faced equally impossible choices. When German forces arrived to fight alongside the British, they brought something unusual with them: families, officers' wives who refused to be separated from their husbands during years of warfare. These women found themselves caught between two worlds, fighting a war they didn't choose in a country they'd never seen before. The Baroness von Riedesel was one of these remarkable women. She traveled from Germany to America with her 3 young daughters, determined to stay close to her husband, General Friedrich von Riedesel, who commanded German troops fighting for the British. What she found in America was unlike anything she could have imagined. This wasn't the civilized warfare of European battlefields. This was brutal, desperate fighting, where civilians were just as likely to die as soldiers. The Baroness found herself trapped in cellars during bombardments, caring for wounded soldiers while trying to protect her own children from the horror surrounding them. During the Battle of Saratoga, the Baroness and her daughters spent days huddled in a basement while American artillery pounded their position. The conditions were nightmarish. Wounded soldiers lay dying around them, sanitation was non-existent, and food was scarce. But instead of cowering in fear, the Baroness organized other women to care for the wounded and maintain some semblance of order in the chaos. She wrote detailed accounts of her experiences that give us an incredible window into what warfare looked like from a civilian perspective. Her descriptions of treating wounded soldiers, rationing food, and comforting dying men reveal a strength that military historians often overlook. When General von Riedesel was captured after the American victory at Saratoga, the Baroness faced another impossible choice. She could return to Germany with her daughters and live safely, or she could follow her husband into captivity. She chose to stay, spending 4 years as essentially a prisoner of war while caring for her family and other German prisoners. Her story reminds us that courage during the Revolution wasn't limited to Americans. Women on all sides of this conflict found themselves making extraordinary sacrifices for the people they loved. But perhaps no group of women made greater sacrifices than those fighting for their own freedom. Thousands of enslaved African Americans saw the Revolution as their chance to escape bondage, and many of the most courageous freedom fighters were women. When the British promised freedom to any enslaved person who joined their forces, it created an impossible dilemma for African American families. They could stay with their masters and hope for eventual liberation, or they could risk everything for immediate freedom with no guarantee of survival. Mary Perth was one of the thousands who chose freedom. She escaped from her Virginia plantation and made her way to British lines, where she worked as a cook and laundress for British forces. For 7 years, she lived in constant danger, knowing that capture meant not just return to slavery, but likely death as punishment for her escape. When the British finally evacuated New York in 1783, Mary faced her greatest test yet. Would the British actually honor their promise of freedom, or would they abandon the African Americans who had risked everything to support them? The Book of Negroes, a British military record, shows that Mary Perth was among the 3,000 African Americans who sailed to Nova Scotia to start new lives as free people. Her journey from slavery to freedom represents one of the most remarkable transformations of the Revolutionary era. She went from being considered property to being a pioneer in what would become a thriving Black loyalist community in Canada. Her courage to seize freedom when the opportunity arose changed not just her own life, but the lives of her descendants for generations. While women like Mary Perth were fighting for their own freedom, other women were organizing to support the broader cause of American independence, and they were doing it in ways that would fundamentally change how women participated in political life. Esther Reed understood something that many of her contemporaries missed. Wars aren't just won by soldiers with muskets. They're won by entire societies working together toward a common goal. In 1780, she organized something that had never been attempted before in American history, a nationwide fundraising campaign run entirely by women. Reed's Ladies Association of Philadelphia became the model for similar organizations across all 13 colonies. These weren't just social clubs or charity organizations. They were sophisticated political networks that raised enormous sums of money and coordinated support for American forces. The women involved in these associations came from all social classes. Wealthy merchants' wives worked alongside seamstresses and tavern keepers' daughters. They went door to door collecting donations, organized fundraising events, and created supply networks that kept Continental forces equipped and fed. The money they raised was substantial. In Philadelphia alone, women collected over $300,000 in contributions and pledges. But more importantly, they proved that American women could organize politically and make meaningful contributions to public life. Reed published pamphlets explaining the goals of the Ladies Association, and her words reveal a revolutionary new vision of women's role in society. She argued that while women might not be able to march into battle, they had other powers that could be just as decisive in achieving victory. These women were laying the groundwork for changes that would reshape American society long after the war ended. They were proving that women had political opinions, organizational skills, and the ability to influence public events. The Ladies Association became a model for women's political participation that would influence reform movements for the next century. If you're blown away by these incredible stories of courage and determination, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to Military Hmmm for more forgotten tales from American history. Comment below and tell me which woman's story you think deserves a movie of its own, because honestly, every single one of these stories could be a blockbuster film, but we're not done yet. Because the most remarkable thing about these women isn't just what they accomplished during the war. It's how their actions changed the very idea of what American women could become. The women of the American Revolution didn't just support independence, they redefined what it meant to be American. From Martha Washington's tireless care for soldiers at Valley Forge, to Emily Geiger's death-defying spy missions, from Deborah Sampson's battlefield heroics, to Mary Perth's courageous escape from slavery, these women shattered every expectation society had placed on them. They proved that patriotism has no gender, that courage comes in all forms, and that freedom is worth any sacrifice. Their legacy lives on in every American woman who refuses to be silently on the sidelines, who stands up for what she believes in, and who fights for a better future. These stories remind us that the real heroes of history aren't always the ones whose names appear in textbooks. Sometimes they're the ones who history tried to forget. But we remember them now, and their courage continues to inspire us centuries later. If these incredible stories of forgotten American heroes have opened your eyes to the true complexity of our nation's founding, hit that like button and subscribe to Military Hmmm. We're dedicated to uncovering the untold stories that shaped our world. Drop a comment below and let me know which woman's story resonated most with you. And remember, the next time someone tells you that women didn't fight in the American Revolution, you'll know they couldn't be more wrong.